An entitled Karen working at a major corporate company refuses to pay me for the work I provided, so I decided to get revenge by taking her and her company to court, forcing them to come before a judge just to prove them wrong that I'm deserving of the money that they should have paid me. And I've never felt better about getting back at somebody in my life. Here's what happened. So I was working 40 hours a week programming at my main job, but I did occasional small projects in the evenings or on the weekends for other clients. At one point, I was referred to a large company that runs major stadiums and event venues around the country. One of their stadiums is relatively close to where I live. And for the sake of the story, I'm just going to call this company Mark 1. That is obviously not the real name of the company. This manager at Mark 1 said they wanted a simple administrative database and user interface for employee timekeeping. Apparently, the old system that they had was not working for them. I got details of what they wanted and drafted a set of specifications. I told them I could do this for a $2,000 flat rate fee, and they agreed. I immediately went to work and churned out a database and a user interface for the system with full documentation, all in about 2 weeks. So I scheduled an in-person meeting to show them. Now, when I showed up at the meeting, someone representing the security department was there, and he asked about getting some additional features. So I said to him, sure, I can do that. So I went back, I wrote up a change request, and incorporated the additional features with the platform. I scheduled another meeting with Mark 1 for a couple of days later. When I got to that meeting, I noticed the audience had grown. There were 2 extra people from the finance department. They asked me, well, can you add like 3 more features that we really need? So I said to them, sure, no problem, I could do that. So I left, I wrote up another change request, and I added the features that they wanted. A few days later, I meet with them again, and imagine my surprise when the audience size had grown, and the new attendees asked for more features. This went on for 5 more rounds, and I was getting frustrated that a 2-week project was now taking a couple of months, and I wouldn't be paid until I delivered and they accepted the final product. But I chugged along, implementing all the change requests that they put in. But one day, the Mark 1 manager called me, and apparently she had been speaking with other departments that weren't represented in her status meetings of ever-increasing mass. She gave me a list of dozen new features that they wanted, some of which would require a complete redesign of the core database and an overhaul of the user interface. But at this point, I had had enough. I told her, this is a complete overhaul of the original specifications. I'll have to redesign and rebuild this from the ground up. This lady then said to me, well, that's not my problem. And it's at this moment that I realized that this company and all of its employees are nothing but bad news. When she said to me that this is not her problem, I responded by saying, well, actually it is. I'm not going to design and build an entirely new system until you pay me for the current one, which is the one we built out to the specifications we agreed upon. After a short pause, she dropped something heavy on me. She said to me, well, we're not going to renegotiate. You can consider this project canceled. I said to her, that's not how this works. You still have to pay me for the work that I've done. She then responded back by saying, no, I don't. You haven't delivered anything. Sue me. And that's right when she hung up. And at this point, I decided that I was going to maliciously comply. So I took Mark 1 manager's advice, and I went to the courthouse the next day to file in small claims court to recover $2,000 from Mark 1. On my court date a couple of months later, I went down to the courthouse and was greeted by an arbiter. In my state, they have court-appointed arbiters that meet the litigants when they arrive to see if the parties can sort out the case with an agreement to maximize the judge's time. The arbiter asked me straight up, is there anything that you would agree to resolve this immediately? I thought about it and I said to them, if they pay me 90%, which is $1,800, right now on the spot, I'll drop the suit. He then went into a side room where the Mark 1 manager and the corporate lawyer were hanging out. I heard her screaming that they would either pay it all or pay zero. The arbiter came to me with the news and I told him, oh, I heard it, and I'm happy to take it all. He then laughed and said no, they want to go to trial. Fast forward a couple of hours and we're standing in front of the judge. I'm at my table alone and the Mark 1 manager and the lawyer are standing at the opposite table. The judge asked the Mark 1 manager to tell her side first. She went into a very long speech about the project and corporate America and apple pies and sunshine and rainbows. And honestly, I have no idea because I stopped listening after 28 minutes. Literally, she talked nonstop for at least 30 minutes. Then the judge asked me for my side of the story. Now, I wasn't maliciously ignoring Mark 1 manager's long-winded tale of political intrigue and patriotism. I was actually formulating a strategy. I thought to myself, the judge probably had people people who like to speechify in front of him all day, every day. I also thought he might appreciate a short and sweet story that got straight to the point and didn't waste his time. So I said to him, "Your Honor, they agreed to pay me $2,000 to design and build a software system for them. I completed the work based on the agreement specifications, and they decided to cancel the project after I was done." And that is all I said. The judge then asked me, "Well, how do I know that you did the work?" Well, I printed out the specifications, the change request, the documentation, and the source code the night before. I lifted a ream of paper about 500 pages thick from my table, and I offered it to the bailiff. I said to them, "Here's the code I wrote for them, Your Honor." The bailiff came to take it from me, and the judge waved him off. He said to them, "No need, I can see it from here." The judge then asked the Mark I manager, "Ma'am, is this true?" She then looked like she was in a daze. She said, yes. And that's when the judge said exactly what I was hoping for. He said, "Then I fine for the plaintiff in the amount of $2,000. About a month later, Mark I still had not paid me. So I called the county sheriff and explained. I sent him the court judgment documents, and he said, "Oh, no problem, they'll pay." The sheriff then actually called me later that day. He was on a cell phone, and I could hear him talking to the Mark I manager. He told her to cut a check for $2,000 right now, or he was going to rip her computers out of the wall and auction them off until the judgment is satisfied. Now, I don't know if he had the authority, but the sheriff seemed to have a grudge against Mark I, and he was reveling in the opportunity to dog them out. Now, apparently, Mark I believed that this guy had the authority because, to make a long story short, the sheriff had a $2,000 check in his hand about 15 minutes later, and it was in my mailbox about a week later. And I've never felt better about getting back at somebody who clearly was trying to take my money. That is an awesome story. I can't imagine doing 500 pages worth of code and then having some stupid Karen of a manager step in and be like, "Oh, we're not paying you. If you don't like it, you can try and sue me." Like, lady, you don't know what you're getting into. That is so unfair, it's not even funny. I can't stand people who act this way. They're never honest with anybody around them, and they also treat people like garbage all because they feel like they have some kind of like air of superiority. Like, lady, all you had to do was pay this guy and hire somebody else. But you can't pretend that he didn't do his job and that you people are just weird and wanted more things all the time. Because that's all that happened here. These people kept coming back and asking for more, and it was stuff outside of what he designed and said, "Okay, this is what I will do." This is also not a question of if he could or couldn't do it. The original poster is clearly very smart. They're obviously qualified for the job. But let's say hypothetically I'm building a house, and then my client comes back and says, "We don't like that house, build us another one." I would be like, "Okay, well, pay me for the first one first, and then we can talk about a second one." Because that's basically what happened, and it's honestly crazy that they didn't pay this guy. So good for you for getting your $2,000 and shoving it right in their face, because these people absolutely suck. And I'm absolutely convinced that if you did not get a judge involved, these people probably never would have paid you. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My parents are currently telling me to not come home for Thanksgiving break, all because I went to a debate tournament. And right now, I'm so frustrated, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm in college right now, and I live away as I dorm. I'm also in my college's debate team, and this weekend we had a debate tournament at a school a couple hours away from us. I actually live in the same city as where the debate tournament was taking place. I was planning on going straight home after the debate tournament for Thanksgiving break. I told my family I would be home this weekend and that I had the debate tournament as well, and they were fine with it. Since the tournament was a 2-day thing, I initially asked my parents if they were comfortable having me and my team members stay over at my house. They said we didn't have the space, so I looked for accommodations elsewhere, and by that I meant a hotel. My debate team then looked for hotels, but we were gonna be there Friday night in a big city, so we decided to stay at another team member's house who also lived in our same city. Anyways, the day comes around, which was yesterday by the way, and we attended the competition, and it all goes until 11 o'clock p.m. I call my parents and I tell them that I'm going to my team member's house. At this point, my dad loses his mind because he thinks that we should be in a hotel and that my university doesn't care about us since they didn't put us in a 5-star hotel and drive us out there with a big car. But I told him that's not how it works. As a club, we only get a certain budget, and we chose to not spend it on a hotel so that we could have money left over for our future expenses. He was also upset I'm staying at a stranger's house, even though it's my teammate that I've known for years, and her parents parents were there with us. My dad was upset and told me to find my own way home, and he was initially supposed to pick me up. My dad didn't end up picking up my calls until later into the night. Early this morning, when we arrived at the tournament for our second day here, I called my parents to let them know that I'm safe. My dad angrily told me to quit the debate team and that this would be my final tournament. I told him no, I won't be doing that, and that I didn't do anything wrong last night anyways. In the end, he told me to just go back to my college and to not bother coming home for Thanksgiving. I'm still at the tournament right now and we leave in a few hours. And honestly, right now I'm wondering, how do I better communicate with my parents on this issue, and should I spend Thanksgiving break at school? What should I do? That is honestly awful. The way your dad and parents are acting is so out of line. Seriously, what are they so mad about? They're first of all pretending like they care about your safety, while also being like, well, now you can't stay with us at all. Spend your Thanksgiving break on campus, see if we care. Also, I'm not gonna pick you up like I said I was going to, bye-bye. Seriously, your parents are awful. And the fact that your dad tried to make you quit the debate team as a 20-year-old adult, that in my opinion is hilarious. This guy has no say over your life anymore. He can't tell you what you can and cannot do, and he can't make you do anything in my opinion. Sure, you can try and honor your parents' wishes as best you can, and try and have some kind of relationship with them, but if that starts to be a detriment towards you and your happiness, then it's time to take a step back. And in this instance, I don't think that would be a terrible idea. Your parents are very much involved in your life, which is awesome, that's really good, but it also seems like they have some kind of weird entitlement over what you can and can't do. Just look at your dad for example. All jokes aside, he really thought he was entitled to try and make you quit debate team, and that's crazy in my opinion. So you know what, if I was in your shoes, I would honor what they said. I would be like, okay, you want to try and act like that? Fine, I'll go back to campus. I don't need this garbage. Now, if you do that, I think there is a chance he might try to guilt trip you into coming back to his house or some other weird stuff like that. I personally would not be surprised if he tries to do that and tries to spin this against you, all because he said, oh, you're not coming to my house now. Which, by the way, I'm still not clear as to why he's acting like that. It really seems like you were trying to just make things work for both you and your debate team while you're going to this tournament that clearly was very important to you. So honestly, I'm so sorry your parents are acting like this, because honestly, you do not deserve to be treated like that in the slightest. My dad is constantly trying to shove his religion down my throat, and after dealing with this for so many years, I'm finally at a breaking point, and I now don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I was closer to my dad growing up much more than I am now. My parents divorced in 2005 when I was about 6 or 7 years old, so most of my life with my parents had been back and forth trips on weekends and divided holidays. My mom had custody of me and my brother technically, but there was no separating us from our dad. It was a pretty amicable divorce. We had shared time for years, and it didn't seem to affect our relationship with our parents until I guess when I started high school. My dad used to drink a lot, but I don't remember him as a heavy drinker at all. I just remember him as my dad. Maybe I was too young to notice because my older brother remembers it more than I do. My dad met a woman who did help him sober up more, but also got him on the born-again Christian pipeline, and it completely changed his personality. My dad met this woman when I started high school, who is now his wife. When they first got together, it was fine, but quickly my dad decided to move almost an hour away from our hometown and still expected me and my brother to fulfill the same amount of visits after school and on weekends. Both my brother and I began to hate going back and forth. I remember I used to get so angry because I was constantly trying to do schoolwork on school nights after driving an hour to go see my dad. I was an honors high achiever type that had a lot of homework on his plate, and then he would get annoyed that I was paying more attention to my schoolwork than him. It became a struggle of giving my dad all the attention he wanted rather than what I wanted or needed, and because of this, I started to resent him. I resented that he didn't take me or my brother's time into account. Well, one Christmas, he made us drive an hour through a snowstorm on Christmas Eve, and the storm continued through Christmas Day as we drove home to see our mom's side of the family. My brother had just gotten his license, and I was about 13 or 14 years old. I remember that so vividly because I think that's when I realized his narcissistic tendencies. He changed so much because of his wife. He became almost like a completely different person. He isn't the dad I used to know. And when that started to happen, I also resented his wife, even though it was probably good for him that he was sobering up because of her. But I didn't recognize him anymore, and I would get into fights with both of them on visits. I hated her for changing him. I didn't feel like I could connect with him anymore. Now, me and my brother were not raised in religion. We were given the choice to choose what we wanted to believe. But once he changed, he began to try to impose all of his beliefs on us. My brother seems to be able to let it roll off his shoulders pretty easily, but for me, it drove me insane. My political beliefs as well are the polar opposite of my dad's. I'm very progressive and he is very conservative. I don't want to get into any debates on here, but I feel like this context is also important to mention because it affected my view of my dad intensely. I didn't want it to, but when it started to involve hate towards women, I felt it personally and it hurt. It's like everything I believe to him is devil worship. It's like he feels the need to save me from myself. With all of this being said, it's very hard for me to understand him, and it's hard for him to understand me. And it would be fine with me if we didn't talk about any of it, but it's like he's a missionary, and he feels like it's his duty to change me and my entire personality. I've had multiple conversations with him about how I don't want to share our beliefs anymore because it does more harm than good. It's like an incessant thing that he feels that he needs to talk to me about. I don't feel much of a connection to him anymore. It feels shallow and artificial, and seeing him feels like an obligation or a chore to me. He is trying to stay connected with me, and I appreciate that he's trying. He is trying to find basis for what we can connect on that doesn't involve religion or politics, but I can barely give him the time of day anymore. I feel guilty about it, but I'm 25 now, and I have so much going on in my life that needs my attention more. I just don't know how to connect with him anymore, and I'm okay with that, but he isn't. He is constantly trying to be in my life, and I do feel horrible about it, but I am so much more comfortable with the distance that I've created between us. Everyone tells me that I should try to stay connected more. Am I doing something wrong by not wanting him super involved in my life? What should I do? Honestly, it really seems like your dad is being super toxic right now. He's trying to force his religion down your throat, and that, in my opinion, is so unacceptable. It would be one thing if it was like an honest and sincere invitation for you to learn about what he believes, but right now it sounds very coercive and very toxic. And I think you're right. It really does seem like he's on a mission to try and like save you from yourself, but it's like, buddy, I don't believe the things you believe. Can you please lay off and let your religion be like a personal thing in your life? Why on earth are you trying to impose it on me? When parents or siblings or anybody does that to anybody else, that in my opinion is so far out of line, it's not even funny. People have free will. They can choose to do whatever they want, even if your religion says otherwise. So honestly, with all things considered, I don't blame you for pulling back, and I really don't blame you for being hesitant about coming back into his life, because honestly, the way he's been acting is super toxic, and I would not want that kind of energy in my life in the slightest. My dad constantly body shames me and makes me feel awful, and after dealing with this as his caretaker, I'm now at the point where I'm trying to move out, and I now seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I have been caretaking for my elderly dad as my mom passed away several years ago, and my relationship with my dad has been strained in general because of his narcissism. It is very difficult because I am a people pleaser to a fault, but I have gotten very angry and resentful of the way that he has treated me within the recent months, and quite frankly, over the years. I'm looking to make other arrangements so that I don't need to help him anymore, but in the interim, it's been difficult. He constantly diminishes the amount that I do. He tells me that all I do is make a few meals for him, and it's his way of trying to be in control, and like he can just do it on his own. In reality, I do a lot more than that. He is elderly and has some health issues and mobility issues, and was also used to my mom doing a lot for him. He constantly is gaslighting me into thinking that I'm the problem when I speak up for myself. When he is rude to me and I tell him that he's being rude, he basically tells me that I need professional help, that I'm uncooperative, while also asking why I can't just be sweet towards him, as well as just be loving, and that I just don't do anything for him. Well, today I hit my breaking point. He's very critical of other people's lives at times, but more specifically, he's very critical of me. Today, he was feeling angry about himself in terms of pain he was feeling in his back, and he took it out on me and told me that I'm not gonna like hearing it, but that I need to take some weight off. Mind you, I'm 32 years old, I'm not a child, so I told him that it's totally inappropriate for him to try and control my life as I'm an adult now, and to just be flat out rude. I got upset and I told him that he shouldn't be acting like I'm a kid, and then he responded by saying, well, I shouldn't be acting like one then. He told me that he's a truth teller and that to him, I look like I've gained weight. I'm so tired of being criticized in every single way. It has taken a serious toll on me, and every time this happens, I feel horrible about myself. He's done things like this before. He always projects his own misery onto the most vulnerable person, which is me. I know that I need to separate myself from him and not help him anymore, which I am desperately trying to make plans to do, but finding a new place has been difficult price-wise. I am looking into caregiving services for him to use when I leave. When I do leave, I feel like I'm likely going to need to take space from him and go low contact or even just no contact altogether. My sister and he are going to Thanksgiving together to my extended family in another state, but I got invited to go to a tailgate and a football game, so I am having Thanksgiving with my friends and her family. I feel like my dad is just going to talk ill about me the entire time when he's one-on-one with my sister. It just makes me feel all around awful about myself, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Honestly, this is such an awful situation. Your dad is being so toxic, there's no other way about it. He's basically taking for granted the fact that you're taking care of him, and he's taking out all of his weird frustrations out on you. And by the way, I'm sure you didn't gain any weight. He's probably just saying the one thing he knows that can hurt your feelings. He's coming after you in a way that he's probably done for a long time. So in my opinion, I don't blame you for getting out of that house. Find a caregiver, move out, and just don't deal with him any longer. Because in my opinion, you should not feel obligated to take care of somebody who treats you so poorly. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.